I've been seeing in the industry. I've been in the industry in digital for like 18 plus years. So there's a lot to talk about and a lot to see as well. So it's really important that we kind of look at these different pieces and see how these pieces are playing. Um, and being able to use it to map a road forward. And in this case, I actually call it a flight plan forward, not just a roadmap, because to me, a roadmap is a little bit one dimensional as well. Um, so I'm going to be talking about that today. I'm going to be going over the 2021 trends based on 4 specific categories as well. And we just want to make sure that I'm going to be presenting here as well. So make sure that that works. Always some little tech thing. All right, let's see if this works now. And then we'll get rolling. Okay, cool. So I'm going to be presenting from my iPad. For those who aren't familiar with how it's done, I'm broadcasting on Zoom, broadcasting live on Zoom through Restream as well, which then connects to LinkedIn Live, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and Periscope, and a few others as well, actually, and onto my personal Facebook profile as well. So if you're on any of those channels, would really love to hear from you. And again, it's hard to switch back and forth between the two. So if you do have a comment, would love to hear from you. If you do like it, please like it as well. And I'll try to get back to comments and questions as quickly as possible after as well. So it looks like we're all good to go. We've got the tech lined up, and honestly, that's the biggest challenge. Usually, it's being able to enable this technology, and it's actually one of the maybe not themes of the trends, but one of the things that's really important is that we need to look at how do we actually use technology. It's not one of those great saviors, right? It's one of those things that you can use as tools as well. So that's really what's more important, is how do we actually use it as a tool going forward as well. So, all right. So the digital lens, looking forward, your top digital business and marketing trends affecting you and your business in 2021. And as we know, this is actually my annual presentation as well. And I did one last year for 2020. And I tend to focus more on sort of the cultural side, the behavior side. This isn't a category of tech trends, right? There's a lot of businesses that produce kind of tech trends of AI and that sort of thing. And I wanted to go a layer actually deeper here, because I feel that that's the most important thing here. Is anybody can use the tech. You can learn how to use it. You can innovate with it, and innovation is actually something I'm going to be talking about pretty quick. But you can use the innovations. You don't need to be an innovative company to use the technical innovations. And it's the innovation fallacy that I'm going to be going through as well. So it's really important that we understand that there is a difference as well. And this is, again, focusing in on the more of the behaviors of the audiences and how we're enabling and how we're using and how we're leveraging and that sort of thing as well. So it's November 2020. Where to from here, right? 2020 has been a difficult year. Let's be completely honest and upfront about that. But where to from here, right? What's going to happen? Where are you going? What are you doing? That sort of thing. So if we learned anything from this year, 2020, is that we really kind of need to put a plan in place. We really need to put, excuse me, a strategy in place that gives us that platform to be able to really get down to business and to really sort of understand what it is that we need to do with business as well. So my name is Doyle Bueller. I guide digital challenger businesses in navigating the daunting, disruptive digital economy and overcoming the fear, anxiety, and resistance of operating as a true digital company in the 2020s. I help them to discover, align, and skyrocket their online businesses and visibility so the world knows who they are and how they do business. And I like to say that we're the digital challengers, right? This is a perfect time. This is the perfect time, really, when you think about it. We've got an amazing amount of tools. We have an amazing amount of technology that we can just plug into. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can actually use what has been there and what people have, excuse me, already produced for us. So change your attitude, F your head, make it honest, unsentimental accounting of your present condition. Prepare to be disappointed. And if there's anything we've learned about business and digital, is that it doesn't always work. And you know what? That's okay. So define what you want instead clearly. By clear, I mean precise and feasible. An unrealistic objective is sure to sabotage the process. Hit the books, try and error, inquire, risk, mimic, insist, and resist as well. And I want to thank Jeff for finding that quote for me. Fantastic. I absolutely love it. So, all right, so just a bit of housekeeping as well. If you do have questions, if you're on the webinar, please feel free to type them into the webinar question box or chat box. Please type along the way. If you're watching this live, please just indicate that this is a replay, or not rather the replay, but you are asking live as well, and I will come back and get those questions as well. So again, as I said, it is a little bit difficult to switch between questions and presentation and all that kind of stuff, and my brain really slows down. So if you are watching this in replay as well, please just hashtag replay as well, so I know when I can respond to that also. So if you do stick around, I do have some gifts as well that I'll be giving out at the end of the presentation. And look, there's nothing to buy here. This is a learning educational type web event. Okay, it's not a pitch. It's not a sales process. It's defining these trends that I'm talking about. That's really important. I fundamentally believe in educating people in terms of what they need to know and how they can then actually utilize that as well. So it's a no pitch zone. If it's been helpful, please like and share as well. And if you did want to check out some other additional resources as well, I have what I call my digital expedition resources. So go to bit.ly /digital expedition resources and make sure I seem to have, I can still move, but my pen's not working. All right, so while I'm figuring out that tech, darn pen, we'll keep moving. So anyway, if you do have any questions along the way, please type them in the chat as well, and I'll get to them as soon as I can. All right, so let's get into the why. So the journey of discovery and opportunity awaits. Fundamentally, that's what it comes down to. Okay, most businesses are still trying to figure out what to do here in the digital space, and I'm going to show you exactly those ones that are and those that aren't, and what's happening as a result. The good thing is that you're already sitting on this mountain of value, right? You just need to be able to leverage it in the digital space. And I find that as one of the biggest challenges as well, is that there's a lot of amazing businesses out there. They've got a lot of great assets. They have a good functioning digital ecosystem, but they're not able to put these pieces together to kind of make it into a fully operational machine or very efficient operation or whatever the case may be, right? So it's really important that we look at how do we actually take that and how do we make it work further for us. So that's what it is how do we actually transition? There we go. Now my pen's working. How do we transition across this whole landscape? And there's a whole metaphor I have for this based on the digital expedition, and I'll talk a little bit about that getting into that. But we have 10 base camps that help us direct our energy towards solving our problems and being able to define our digital and defining our assets and that sort of thing. And ultimately, what's it about? Well, sales and growth and digital growth through your online presence by defining, developing, and delineating your digital assets and ecosystem. And that's really critical here, is we need to make sure that you're able to define that properly. And how do you start with that? Well, you need to know what's important and what's not important, what you should worry about, what you don't need to worry about as well. And this is where we get the digital promised land, right? Not sort of the Pollyanna type view of, oh, you're going to get whatever 10-figure business, or, your PayPal accounts can be full every day type thing. We're talking real businesses here doing real important things along the way as well. But we want to get to this space because that's where we can do good, right? That's where we can actually leverage our business and move things forward as well. And if we look at it, these are the 10 steps as well that I go through as part of, I've got a webinar coming up in a couple weeks. Every 2 weeks I run one, but talking about the digital expedition. And I'm going to be going through a few topics throughout here in terms of how do we actually make this work. But don't worry too much. It's a little bit complicated. I'm not going to get into it too heavily today. But I just wanted to sort of set the stage rather to show you, okay, this is how it actually fits together. All right, so let's move forward and get back to the why. One of the things that I've found over the last 9 months is who is actually using digital and how is that affecting these businesses? Because if you think about it, the businesses that have been doing something fundamental, who have, and just there's a little bit of a lag between the iPad and the screen for some reason. I don't know why it seems to be so long. But anyway, another tech issue. But guess what? That's okay. Don't let tech destroy your day. Just sort of use it as you can. All right. So what we're talking about here is digital adoption, and what I mean here is what are businesses actually doing in the digital space? Do they have they met the bare minimum of a website? Okay, and maybe a Facebook page or something like that. And yeah, there is a good percentage of them that have done that, but the ones that haven't, you really kind of need to ask the question of why. And I'd love to hear, if you can share in the chat or the question or in the comments, do you feel that what level of digital adoption do you feel that your business has? Um, because it's really important to understand where we are, because then we can define where we want to go. So, surprise, surprise, we're actually only looking at the UK and the US, we're actually only between 15 and 20% on an average. And that's like for 2019. If we look over here, right, 2019, 2020. To me, when I saw this, I was like surprised, like, you got to be kidding me. Only 20% have a level of digital enablement that actually allows sort of that customer journey. And there's a lot that goes into this too. It's, again, as I said, it's not just about having a web page. It's not just about having a Facebook page. It's about integrating all these different pieces, having specific digital assets to continue the journey for your customer. Having a community, having an ability to communicate and connect with each other as well, which is so, so important. But if we look at it, when did COVID come in? Yeah, right down here. Okay, so we look at how did that actually change business, and fundamentally it changed it significantly for those businesses that have a good digital platform, the digital assets and the digital ecosystem as well. It actually jumped up to about 35%. Okay, so that's pretty darn good, right? If we go from 20 to 35%, and again, these are businesses that are leveraging that opportunity that's there. So if you can imagine, what if we were set up for that on an ongoing basis? Where is your business in terms of digital adoption, digital penetration? Where are you operating from? How are you actually connecting and communicating? Do you have more than just a website? And as I said, that's just a simple entry point. It doesn't guarantee any business. It doesn't guarantee any success whatsoever. It's very difficult to be able to manage a business if you're not in the digital space and if you don't have that adoption of your business. And there are a lot of things that you can actually do. But the point is if you're looking at that, we grew the digital economy by 20%. Okay. And what did that mean? Actually, sorry, just before I get into that, that's the US and UK stats. So digital activity in Australia, yep, guess what? It's gone up as well. And look, there is going to be some drops, and we have seen it where as things kind of settle down, the amount of people buying in e-commerce and developing sales in e-commerce has gone down. I don't know the significance of that. So it is going to be a little bit of a bump. But the fact is that you can continue that growth upward if you are able to enable this as well. So it's really, really important to be able to do this. So I want to get some stats, and I'll be presenting those later. I have a State of Digital web event coming up as well in December, where I'll go through the specific stats. But we're seeing that peak and the continuation. And what we need to realize is that, can we get on this curve, and can we actually do something about it? Can we actually move things forward, which is so, so important? Because if we're not, then we need to look at, well, what's the purpose? You have access to a global business in your back pocket, right? What businesses are actually utilizing that? Not a lot. 20%, 25%. It's not significant. So if you are able to enable and engage on these different capabilities and practices and that sort of thing, then that's where the real opportunity exists. And I want to quickly talk about the innovation fallacy. A lot of us feel that innovation means that you're inventing new things, and that if you're not an innovative company, then you might as well not exist. And not don't get me wrong, not everybody says that, but there is this fallacy that you have to be innovative company to actually utilize that technology. If you look at Australia, the innovation capability of this country or other countries around the world, we're kind of measuring businesses with the wrong stick, I would actually say, because it's more important that us as small businesses, as corporate businesses, as whatever entrepreneur solopreneurs, doesn't really matter what kind of business you have, we need to be able to enable and engage that the tools of innovation. Okay, so we don't need to invent them, we don't need to completely innovate our industry. We need to be able to take those tools and apply them to our specific business. And to me, that's the most important part, is that how do you actually apply those innovations? How do you apply those technologies towards this? How do you apply something as simple as Zoom, right, or other video conferencing type facilities, to be able to build an experience, to be able to connect and engage with your audience as well? So don't think that you're failing if you're not innovating. It goes a lot deeper than that. It's, are you able to use those technologies that are already there? Okay, you don't have to be an app developer to utilize these technologies. They're all there, you just need to plug into them. And today in the 2020s, like, that's what's really important as well. So we're at 20 to 30% digital adoption and penetration. That's about here, right? Where should most of us be? I would suggest, over here. We really need to understand, well, how do I get from here to there? Right? And the digital expedition is one of those ways. There's a lot of different things you can be able to do, but if we're still sitting here, right, and again, I'd love to hear, if you're watching, if you're in the replay, like, where do you feel that your business is? Because I would love to get sort of a feel for that sort of thing. From 1 to 100, where do you think your business fits right now, and where should you be as well? Because that's what's going to be important. So can we bridge this gap? Absolutely. Right, we need to be able to enable that capability also throughout that. And as I said, the businesses that engaged properly saw an amazing opportunity. Okay, can you imagine 5 years of growth in 3 months? So that graph that I just showed you, that's based on this point here, and it looks really small, this little snaggle tooth at the end, right? And again, just for clarity, this is the US retail sales. But this is a trend that we're seeing throughout the digital e-commerce worlds as well, is that small little snaggle tooth, that actually means 5 years of growth in 3 months. Okay, so if you see that growth, guess what, where's that happening? That's happening along the e-commerce, or rather online world. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean e-commerce. So I know there's a lot of service-based businesses. Guess what? There's massive opportunities as well. You don't necessarily have to have a store or sell something specific, like a can of beans or some shoes or whatever the case may be, to be able to leverage this as well. And that's really important. Okay, so this works for both service-based and sort of e-commerce online retail as well. But what could you do with 5 years of growth in 3 months? Like, those businesses that were there, they either shifted, they either pivoted, they actually or changed their direction, or they just were already ready. Like, let's be honest, some of those, the digital adoption was about 20%. So those were the ones that were seeing it. Then the ones that were able to recognize and go, hey, wait a sec, we need to be in this market. We need to be able to shift how we're relating and communicating with our audience. That's critical, and those are the ones that are seeing that active growth as well. So the world is shifting, right? We've previously been focusing on how many clicks we get, right? But we need to shift our thinking to making all of these clicks count. Okay, and without that, you're just wasting your time, you're just wasting your money, you're just wasting your resources as well. So we have to be smarter about digital. It's not easy, it's a very difficult process. And I liken it again to having like an expedition, because we need to be able to think ahead. We need to be able to understand what are these pieces that we need to be able to help us go forward. Okay, and to help us grow or maintain or sustain or whatever case it is with your business as well. So we need to make sure that we're doing that, and we've got a toolkit. We have the resources. We have everything that we need. And yes, things are going to change along the way, but at least if we have sort of the main understanding, then we're able to detail that out as well. So these are what I call the glaciers, in terms of trends for the 2020s and beyond. So again, we're not talking about the tech trends. You can find a lot of information about that, AI and automation and, this type of capability, or, Zoom, what goes beyond Zoom type thing, fundamentally comes down to communication. So I wanted to go through, peel off another layer and say, these are the things that are a little bit more deeper. They're not necessarily tied directly to technology as well, But the point is that trends don't really care if you don't know about them or if you don't see them. They're still there, and they'll continue to sculpt the economic landscape as your business goes through that. All right, so I've broken it down into four specific categories as well. The first one, the rising digital experience, creating remarkable experiences worth remembering. Some do, some don't. Signals from near and far, and data. So, what is your audience telling you, and even more importantly, not telling you? And then from zero trust online. We've seen this specifically online where there's zero trust, and we need to be able to overcome that. We need to be able to understand how to put that in place and how to actually change from that going forward as well. And then I call pathways to positive. So, what's opening up to allow you to connect and engage further and to create this lasting journey? And journey means being able to guide your customer, your audience along that pathway that moves them forward, because ultimately that's what your business is for. It's to service your customer, your audience, to what they want to achieve, and how you're going to transform what they're doing by what you're doing. And by being able to do that, that is where we can actually create the pathways to being able to put it together for our business. All right, so the digital experience can be broken down into a couple key segments. um, Remarkable, number one, remarkable digital experience. So this is like festivals. I'm going to be talking about Disney rather, versus Cirque du Soleil, sports broadcasting for live, and creating that true engagement type thing. Entertaining, don't be boring. We've heard a lot about Zoom fatigue, and why do you think that is? It's because, I mean, and I'll be honest, this is a talking head show, right? But we need to engage, and we've created some amazing events that pull from all sort of that sensory perception of everything that we do and we know. And guess what? It's done on Zoom. Zoom is just the channel. Zoom is just the way that it's carried. But if we look at how we're able to produce that moving forward, um, the future of events is digital. Let's be perfectly honest. But we're not talking virtual events. We're talking digital events, and these are what I call the digital festivals as well. Why do you go to a festival? Because it's entertaining, it's exciting. You're kind of using different parts of your bodies and your brains, and that sort of thing, and the senses, and all that, and the tastes and everything that's there. We need to be able to create those experiences for what we're providing, what we're delivering online. And I don't mean everything needs to be a circus either, right? Like, let's be completely honest. But it needs to be, you need to up the levels of being entertaining, being fun. And when we're talking about, bringing in comedians or bringing in artists and bringing in these musicians that can actually help create those um, new experiences in that digital space. And we really need to embrace this, because this is where we are headed. Okay. And COVID in 2020 may have forced a lot of people into this. And yes, some are going to be jumping off the wagon as things go back to normal, which is fine. But can you imagine the opportunity that you would have in front of you for being able to continue that? Okay. And yes, physical on location events are important. Don't get me wrong. But what if you could actually expand that capability to be able to offer the digital events around the world? You've immediately, increased your audience and your reach immediately. And so it's simply a matter of how do you actually use these tools to be able to enable that? How do you actually create the festivals? And then finally, number three, scaling, enabling through digital. So hosting full scale events for millions from your workspace or your basement. Okay. And this is what I've said before about your global audience. You can work as a local business. Don't get me wrong. You can, work within your 10-kilometer radius of, your typical customer base or whatever. But, what if you're able to actually have that global audience? And you can. And then there's unfortunately so many stories as well that have come out of this period that people are just kind of just sitting and going, oh, I'm just going to sit this one out type thing. And when you think about it, and some of them are quite honestly famous musicians, which has just struck me as completely odd. It's like they're very disappointed that they can't have their global tour, so they're just kind of sitting back and maybe recording a few songs and that sort of thing, which is great. But then you have these other musicians, these other entertainers that are embracing this, right? They see that, hey, this is a tremendous opportunity for them to be able to do that. And maybe it's again back to the why companies may not be doing this as well. And we look at five, I think it's what 60% of companies don't make it past year five. The challenge, doing this, right? The challenge is being able to put these pieces in place as well. So could we actually change that trend itself by giving companies the opportunity to say, hey, this is how you actually do it, this is how you succeed, this is how you scale in digital. And I know, again, it's difficult and it's not easy, but there are methodologies that can help you get past that as well. So anyway, back to my story about the musicians. The ones who are making the difference are the ones who are saying, hey, wait a sec, I don't have to be in one city at a time, right? I can be in all cities at once. And when you look at the scale of that, so instead of doing a show as a musician, you might do small bars or big concerts or coliseums or concert halls or whatever. But what if you could do all of those simultaneously to your audience? And again, the ones that are making a difference are the ones that are going, oh yeah, like tell me about it. I can actually create for 1 hour concert, I can connect with everybody around the world. And so we need to think like musicians as well. It's like, guess what? It doesn't matter if you're running a conference, a big, massive conference every year in Las Vegas or in Sydney or whatever the case may be. You have to think about getting all those people into that location, which is great. And don't get me wrong, it's a fundamental experience. But what if you could connect all the cities, all the towns, all the people around the world simultaneously at one point in time? Like, do you not believe that your scale has just grown significantly? So it's a huge opportunity as well. So the new wave of business, in terms of the digital experience, there's three specific things that we need to look at. Okay, we need to look at value creation. So are we able to surprise and delight? So fundamentally, people are looking at value. Can you do that? Most businesses can, right? You might have to tweak it a little bit to be able to engage it online, but you have those pieces. You have to look at that digital experience, and this is a personalized audience experience. And then we have to look at digital delivery on demand, which I'm going to get into a little bit. But a couple of quick little scenarios. We had what I call HelloFresh meets Jamie Oliver meets Uber Eats. And these are the restaurants around the world or small sort of uh, food services type businesses that are, again, seeing this as a huge opportunity. So if you think about it, HelloFresh is a company that you order the ingredients basically, and they ship them to your house. What if, again, you combine these? Jamie Oliver did a fantastic little show during the earlier parts of lockdown where he would create these dishes and he'd have looked like his family was filming it. I'm not sure if they were, but it was very personal and it was very like iPhone type coverage and that sort of thing, just wonderfully produced. And then if you have Uber Eats type model, where I'm talking about being able to order something and deliver it to you within a matter of half an hour or 45 minutes or that sort of thing. So what if you could combine all that? And the businesses that have combined all of this are the ones that, again, are seeing success throughout the down periods. And if they're then able to maintain that going forward, they've created an entire new industry for themselves, right? So you imagine being able to have you order online, you're able to have a package of food, or, and again, think of an experience, think of something that connects what you're doing with what this actually shows you. But you're able to order those ingredients for yourself, you're able to set it when I want it to be delivered, and you're able to then connect with chefs around the world. And there's a wonderful friend of mine from Canada who's doing just this exact thing. He's connecting chefs with people who want to prepare specific dishes. So if you're a restaurant, guess what? You just moved out of your kitchen, right? And you've moved around the world like in an instant. And when you think of the magnitude of what you can actually do with that, so people can order food from you, they can then get that food delivered to them directly at a specific time and place. And then you, I'm not saying we're all Jamie Oliver in the kitchen, I certainly are not, but then you are able to cook for them. And by cook, I'm meaning the metaphor of you're able to prepare. And this can be a service-based business as well, sending ingredients, sending specific items, sending specific products as well, coordinating with at a specific time and place, and then coordinating it again with being the chef. Okay, being the what I call a digital leader and being able to move that forward, so that you're creating an experience. You're creating an event, and yes, that other person might be, next door or around the world, but they're sharing in that experience, which is fantastic. So look at how you can actually align those three. The next example I want to talk about is Cirque du Soleil versus Disney. Disney Plus, I think, is the actual correct term. Their streaming service. But what happened in the earlier parts of the year, in the first half of the year, was Cirque du Soleil, which is, if you haven't heard about it, I mean, most people have. It's a performing arts theater based out of Montreal in Canada, and they do shows around the world in great big um, um, circus top tents or whatever they call them. Sidebar: I actually was on the pier in Montreal in like 1988, I think it was, and just as they were sort of starting to build and grow and that sort of thing, and their whole shows and their whole sort of theater was right there on the pier in Montreal, which was fascinating looking back. Anyway, they ran into some trouble. They filed for bankruptcy protection in Canada because cash flow, right? Which was a huge issue. Why? Well, because they're not having events. They had to stop having events, and it was very clear, from March, April, May, June, like there weren't any events happening. But if you look at it from a different perspective, and you fundamentally ask the question, what is Cirque du Soleil about? And they fundamentally, I believe, they're about content, and content in events, if you want to go another level. But fundamentally, it's content, and the content comes out in their shows and their performances and everything that they do and their promotion and that sort of thing, where they got their start, being street art performers. But the fact is that that is their content. And if they could actually have leveraged that content, they could have become, the Netflix of spectacle. A Cirque du Soleil is an experience. Okay, let's put that on the table. And being at a show is definitely different than watching a show from a video or whatever the case may be. But could Cirque du Soleil have, enabled that content? Like how many years? 20, well, 30 years of content, of shows from around the world, multiple performances, multiple artists. So if you look at that huge base of content, and what do they do with it? Nothing. Could they have created a subscription type service that allows them to be able to connect with their audience, to allow their fans, because they have raving fans, and not just in a small little location, they have raving fans around the world. So what if they could have produced, a live streaming circus, Cirque du Soleil live stream, or Cirque du Soleil archives, or Cirque du Soleil products. So they could have immediately shifted into something a lot more engaging around the world, not just local. And yes, they can have events. Like once that sort of time passes, they'll go back to events, and I think they've recovered, or they had some company buy them out or whatever the case may be, which is great. But again, if you look at the opportunity that they missed by having that capability to engage people and to revenue share from around the world, like what else could they be doing, and how could they be doing that? And to me, it's phenomenal. They could have had subscription services. Who would pay, $20-$30 a month to watch endless hours of Cirque du Soleil for those raving fans? Absolutely. That's something that can be done. But they didn't. They missed out. And then you look at Disney Plus, rather, the streaming channel, and there's a play called Hamilton, and it's very big around the world as well. I haven't seen it, but it's a live play, live action theater, rather, live theater, whatever the expression is. But what Disney decided to do was to actually just film that. So let's have a performance. Let's film it, record the video, whatever the case may be. They didn't go create a movie about Hamilton. They actually took the actual stage sets and made an actual movie about it. They then released that on Disney Plus. So for a very small fee, they were then able to engage a worldwide audience that could not go to the local theater, could not go to the theaters in New York and Paris and London and everywhere else around the world. I don't know exactly where it was showing. But they've immediately engaged an audience around the world just by enabling some digital adoption, to say, hey, wait a sec, hey, we've got something here. People love going to the show, and they still will love going to the show, but we can have something in between that allows people to go to the show without going to the show. And that's where the opportunity is as well. So Cirque du Soleil versus Disney. Cirque du Soleil didn't necessarily do it very well in my mind. Again, that's my opinion, that's how I see it. They could have done a lot more. They could have sold products. You go to a show and you buy that merchandise. They could have sold more of that. They could have created a whole new streaming service for performing arts, spectacle, the Netflix of spectacle. So how do you create alignment with these three? And that's really important, is being able to understand what those actually mean and how you can put those together. So creating the digital experience, what pieces do you need of, a HelloFresh model? Okay, what do you need? The product, what do you need? The personality, that can be you, that can be a business, that can be, something else. And how do you create that sort of on demand delivery process that can be used as well throughout this? So exciting times. All right, so moving on to the second category, signals and data. And this is something that a lot of businesses miss. We hear a lot about big data and AI and machine learning and that sort of thing. But for a small business, that doesn't really make a lot of sense, because we don't know how to actually use it. We don't know, well, what do you mean by data and how do I actually use it? But data and signals is the actual understanding of this data, right? There's two parts to it. One is, what is this signal that my customer, my audience is telling me, and how do I actually then convert that into data? So there is a process to this. But if we look at it, this is the new oil. Okay, so having an opportunity to understand who your customer is and what they're doing and how they're doing it and what they're saying and what they're not saying and all these different pieces, this is very valuable. And again, it doesn't need to be what the industry calls big data, right? It can be something a little bit more easier, like, what is your customer doing? How are they engaging and interacting with you, through email, through social, these sorts of things? How do we actually understand what they're doing? And the way that we do that is what we call sense making, wanting to make sense of the world now. So how do we actually understand fundamentally what people are telling us and how we actually understand things? And then digital streamlining as well. So making the processes easier and quicker with zero friction. And that's key here. There's a lot of services out there. It's not zero friction. It takes a lot of effort to either fix errors or to understand things. And a lot of times the industry itself is like that, like web businesses and that sort of thing. There is a lot of friction. It is very difficult, and we are sort of catching up in terms of enabling that technology. But how do we make processes easier and quicker with zero friction? So look at your process. Can that be reduced? Can that be streamlined to be able to offer it quicker, faster, easier, you name it, with less hassle, with less, effort, making it much more efficient as well. And then another signal is location and time independence. So we can be anywhere, or rather your customer can be anywhere, anytime, every time. So we need to be able to understand that's what the digital, opportunity is here, is that you can actually do that. You can be a 24/7 global business just by the fact that you have these specific assets set up, you have this digital experience set up, and you have that ability to deliver on demand everywhere around the world. And if you have these pieces, this is what's going to make a difference in your business. So data and signals, do I have that? Do I understand what my customer is saying? And again, it doesn't need to start very complicated. It can start very easy in terms of, how is my audience responding? What are they saying? What are they doing? How are they doing it? So we need to simplify. We can't sort of think about big data as, this big incomprehensible cloud of information kind of thing. We have to be able to extract and pull out pieces and say, okay, this is what my customer's saying. This is what we're understanding. This is how they're doing it as well. So super, super important that we understand that. So in terms of signals and data, so again, we want to make sure that we understand our audience. So something to quickly look at is, are we listening versus hearing? Okay, are we telling people what we want them to believe or understand, or are we sitting back and listening? I liken it to, is your audience wearing noise canceling headphones? There's a reason why people wear noise canceling headphones, and what's that reason? It's so that they don't hear all this extra noise coming from around us or from around them. So People wear them for a reason. So are they wearing noise canceling headphones when you're talking? And I mean that metaphorically speaking, right? Do they actually hear what you're saying? And if nobody's listening, are you actually talking, kind of thing? So we need to be clear about that. Is there a reason why they might have those on? And if so, let's find out. How do we actually get them to understand, or understand what they are listening to as well? So we need to look at clarity versus noise. So what's excuse me, what's important here is, are we just sending noise out, or are we sending something specific, something that allows us to engage, something that allows us to transfer knowledge, or to educate, or inspire, or inform, or something like that, not just noise, adding to the noise as well. And static versus slipstream. I used to be an aerospace engineer back in the day, and you have to look at the static pressure versus the slipstream pressure. And yes, I am oversimplifying it, but static is basically that constant air pressure and business pressure, or customer pressure, whatever you want to call it, that is surrounding us. And slipstream is when we're actually moving forward, when we're able to kind of move, not necessarily against the grain, but being able to move forward with our businesses. So we need to make sure that we are in that slipstream. So static air is important because it tells us, okay, what's going on now, but how do we actually enable that as well? So quick question for you: what are the signals you're being sent? If you got a chance, put those into the question or the comments, and hopefully we'll be able to review those at the end. So what are the signals you're being sent from your audience that you can then use to help them in that journey, in that process as well? And there's an old story from World War II, what I call the missing bullets. So if you can imagine, back then they were sending out airplanes, and I'll draw an engine here so it makes a little bit more sense as well. They were sending out aircraft from England to Europe to basically try to take back Europe. And what they were doing is they were sending out these bombers, and then they would come back and they go, well, we want to try to make this journey a little bit safer, so that we get more airplanes coming back. So what they did was they kind of mapped out the bullets, and they found, that there were some areas where, there were bullet holes and that sort of thing. But what they realized after a little bit was that the measurement of the bullet holes it's a good starting point, okay, but what's it not doing? It's not actually measuring the planes that didn't come back. So it was measuring the what was happening to the planes that were able to come back, which means they survived, but they weren't able to see what was happening to the planes that didn't come back. So there's a huge gap here. And if you look at that gap was actually here. What's that? That's the pilot. What's here? That's the engines. What's here? That's the fuel. And what's here? That's the tail. So the planes that were getting hit in these areas weren't making it back. So what they were actually doing was they were measuring, not necessarily the direct measurement that actually helped them with that problem. They were looking at, okay, well, what do we do? Well, let's put metal armor plating here on these airplanes and that sort of thing, and we'll help get a few more aircraft back. But the fact is that they actually missed the point. Because they weren't looking at what was happening to the planes that weren't coming back, because they were getting hit in these locations. So we need to look at it again, shift your perspective, shift your mindset to be able to say, what are these missing bullets? Okay. What are the bullets that our customer is not telling us? We can see it, but it's not necessarily right staring us in the face. And we need to look at that, how we actually do that. So I'd love to hear, what are your missing bullets, strategies and insights that, it's not necessarily common knowledge, it's uncommon knowledge, but it's a way of understanding that signal to say, okay, this is how we can actually, as I said, wearing noise canceling headphones, this is how we can get inside of those headphones, is by seeing, okay, what are we missing here? What is our data telling us, and what is our data not telling us? So, and in terms of understanding, again, back to the category of data, and signals, we need to understand what's going on. We need to understand the problem. And that's really what you call sense making, giving meaning to experience. And everybody has a lot of experience that they've gone through in business and life and everything, right? So we need to be able to understand that our customer is going through that exact same process. We need to be able to understand that we're moving them rather from an unpredictable world to a predictable world. And yes, we're sort of still in that boat ourselves, but can we move from chaos to complex to knowable to known? So sense making is an understanding as well. It's for us to understand, okay, what's really important here? What can I provide to my audience to help them know more, to help them know better, right? So, quick question: can you define and describe each step along the way? So what does chaos look like to you? What does being complex and unmanageable look like to you? What does being knowable and manageable look like to you? And what does being known and fixable? So every problem that you solve for your customer, you're providing those stepping stones going forward. So this is one of the ways that you can look into that whole idea of sense making, to make sense of everything, to make sense of your customer's journey from an unpredictable world to a predictable world as well. All right, so let's keep moving. Want to be able to wrap up on the hour, so we got a few more things to go through. So the third item is trust. All right. And what I'm talking about specifically is building a personalized digital journey. We've heard a lot about stories and, telling stories, and yes, those are absolutely important, but we have to kind of a story. What's the best way to describe it? A story is a story, but once you sort of convert it into a journey, you're creating an experience. And if you're creating it into a personalized journey, that is sort of the ultimate level of personalization, the ultimate level of trust, the ultimate level of an experience as well. So we need to move beyond. We have to have a story, but we have to convert that into a journey. And that's, for example, why I have the digital expedition, that big worksheet of the 10 steps. That's a journey. So there's a story behind that of creating a very strong, robust business, getting to a destination that's not going to be easy, and doing it in a methodical manner so we actually get there, which is comparable to planning out a trip or an opportunity or whatever the case may be. So it allows us to do that. So we need to look at that from a personalized digital journey basis. And how is that behavior based as well? What are we going to be showing? What are we going to be learning? What are we going to be teaching? What are we going to be demonstrating, and that sort of thing? And that's the personalized digital journey. The chief expedition officer, so this is what I call digital leadership as well. And fundamentally, we need to step up and say, look, I mean, that opportunity that I showed you of the 5 years of growth in 3 months, based on the changing, disruptive digital economy, and as a result of what's happened, but what the opportunity is going forward, we need to step up. And I'm not saying you need to be, the go-to digital guru, right? But you need to understand how these pieces fit together, and that's what I call digital leadership. It's understanding the assets that you need, how that ecosystem fits together, the journey that you're going to provide in the digital space as well. And can you do that as a chief expedition officer? Can you actually say, okay, this is the plan? If you look at expeditions from old, what do? They had, somebody actually organize that. And typically that journey today is a lot, well, the journey in the digital space is a lot more difficult because there are a lot more challenges. It's not obviously life threatening and that sort of thing, but the planning is required. We can't just sort of wait for things to happen. The chief expedition officer has to actually fundamentally understand the problem and the challenge of getting to that summit, right? How do we get to that summit, and how do we get back again in one piece? And there's a lot of planning that needs to go on before you even start that journey. It's no different than, going on a trip or going on a business function or something like that. But we need to be able to understand that there's steps along this way that we need to be able to go through. And that's what the chief expedition officer does, is actually puts a methodology, a plan in place to say, this is what we can do moving forward. This is really, really important for our business to be able to achieve success as well. And then the last one is trust. It's not just about the exchange of data and money. Okay. It's not just making sure that you have an SSL certificate on your site for credit card transactions or personal data or whatever. It's not transactional based. We've got that. Like, again, we're not relying on technology here. We really are not. We're just enabling it. We're plugging it into certain pieces. And guess what? The pieces that aren't being plugged in with trust is the mindset part. Okay. It's really beyond the exchange of data and money. And if you're looking at trust based on a little seal of approval or that sort of thing, that's not the kind of trust that we really need to deliver to our audience as well. So we're in the age of zero trust. We're not going to trust you until you give us a damn good reason. Guess what? I say it many times, but you're at the click of a mouse. I can be anywhere around the world, and I can be at your competitors as well. Excuse me. So with a click of the mouse, I can be around the world at your competitor, right? So can we actually enable that to be able to say, guess what? That click is so important. And that's why I say we have to make our clicks count, is that gives us an opportunity to be able to work directly and build that trust in our audience. So the three things that we need to know about trust: how do you protect my privacy? How do you create permission based marketing and selling? And how do you personalize the experience that you offer so it's unique? This is how we actually can build trust throughout our audience. So we do have to set this up and provide what is expected, but it has to be without conditions as well. So look at that. How are you providing privacy? How are you creating permission, or answering that call to permission? Or did I say you could send that? Did I provide you with that ability to do that? And then how do you personalize the experience that you offer? And that comes down to the digital experience as well, which is obviously very important. All right, so the last category is pathways. So we've got a few here to go through, but they kind of all tie together, just so it kind of makes sense. But there's a safari versus expedition, basically looking at what are we doing right now to kind of get us to the next step. Are we just kind of getting in a truck in Africa or wherever and going and watching the lions, or are we actually doing something fundamental that's going to take a lot of work? It is a journey, it is an expedition, and fundamentally business is an expedition. It's not a safari rather. So micro training learning environments, so people don't have a lot of time. They don't have a lot of time to spend with you, so you have to make every interaction count. Okay, so it's more a matter of how do we actually create those tools. And there's a lot of not necessarily a flood, but a lot of the more innovative technologies. And again, we don't have to develop the technology; we just have to use it. They're fundamentally changing how we learn in the online digital space as well. So they're segmenting, they're making it, creating the experience. They're understanding the needs of the customer. That, guess what, I don't have 20 weeks to do your program, but I've got whatever, 20 minutes a day for a couple times a week, or whatever the case may be. So you have to kind of be able to make it into digestible sections, whatever it is that you're teaching or training or showing or doing as well. Moving on to story. So I did talk a little bit about story in the last one, but social media fundamentally is dead, and it's getting harder. Okay. Excuse me, I just have to get a drink. All right, let's try to keep going. It feels like I'm losing a little bit of my voice. I'm talking because I'm so excited. There's so much to say here. All right, so number 3 is story. Social media is dead and getting harder, right? It is not easy to have a tribe in the digital space on a Facebook group or whatever. So we have to connect more of that story, and that's what a pathway is it can't just be specific, it can't just be generic posts. We have to take them on a journey, we have to take them on a story as well. And that's how we're going to be able to rise past people leaving social media, or having the social media that is so personal and so political and all that kind of stuff. But I digress. So we also have to have digital methodologies. So this is what I'm talking about with foundations, assets, ecosystems, and we can just plug. The cool thing is we can just plug in the talent and tech, right? You don't have to be an innovative company to use an innovation. We just need to understand what that actually does and how we can use it as well. And is it contributing to that journey. Don't use tech because it's like, ooh, shiny object syndrome type thing. Use the tech if it actually moves that journey, moves that value, moves that experience forward as well. And if it doesn't, don't use it, because there is a lot of filler technology out there that you just it looks fantastic, but what does it fundamentally do? Does it make it easier? Does it, contribute to that overall journey as well? Distance is irrelevant. And I talked about this in terms of the musicians, right? What fundamentally are businesses able to do? They can connect anytime, any place, you name it, 24/7. It doesn't mean you have to be sitting in your office or whatever providing that service. It means that you can provide that service 24 hours a day through digital mediums, through videos, through training platforms, through uh, you know um, benchmarks, and through developing that journey along the way, so that you have the ability to reach out to anyone anywhere as you get into it. So create exciting events for your global audience, no travel required. And yes, there is going to be a surge when everybody can travel. But as I said before, what if you can sort of leverage that to go back to your old way of doing business, but now you've got that extra layer, that filler layer that allows you to connect and work with audience and customers from around the world. If you're a musician, why wouldn't you continue to do Zoom shows or digital shows or whatever you want to call them as well, festivals? Um, why wouldn't you? Because you're able to connect to that audience around the world simultaneously. And to me, that's really important. So we can work outside of our typical local 10K bubble that most businesses work in, and we can do this effectively. All right, I talked a bit about this, but on-demand digital delivery right now, businesses, and this is another frustrating point, but business, e-commerce in this case specifically, you can compete with Amazon right now. And perhaps it's not, having all the products in the world in one place, but guess what? You're a specialist in your niche, so you can actually sell your product. You don't need to be Amazon, but you can have the capabilities. You can have the click and collect. You can have the Uber delivery connected to your website right now. And perhaps you don't even need to be, I'll ask the question, you don't even need to be an e-commerce based retail, online e-commerce based business. You can be a service based business. You can have a click and collect for products around your service, right? That extra stuff like your book or whatever the case may be. You can provide that as a click and collect. You can provide that as an on demand delivery anywhere in your neighborhood around the world. And the fascinating thing, and the overlooked part, again, most of us are thinking in the weeds, is that, oh, I'm not Amazon, how am I ever going to compete? You can get these plugins for most WordPress sites or whatever the case may be, that you can engage that click and collect and Uber delivery immediately. Okay, or let's be honest here, within a couple of hours. Okay, there is obviously some work involved, but can you do that on demand digital delivery right now? Yes. You can be set up and running for Christmas, for whatever seasonal variations you have, but you can be doing that right now. And then the other thing, that another pathway that a lot of businesses are missing, are fully completely subscription models, right? So regular products, regular shipping, no hassles. Again, I talked about reducing that friction side of things, and that's super important because that allows you to connect. I just want to use the end product I want, or end service. I want to be able to know that I can count on you, I can trust you, I can, you're going to deliver as well. And guess what does a subscription model mean? It means that you've got a committed customer as well. So those are the important things here, is to look at how do you actually enable this. Look at click and collect, look at Uber type delivery services, look at subscription models, and guess what? You've engaged digital. You've increased your digital adoption by 20% just by having these capabilities as well. So it's fascinating stuff, right? In terms of a pathway, what's really important too is we need to understand, how do these pieces fit together. And a lot of times you look at digital and it is a big kind of mess. It is sort of a big uncoiling this big blob of wire, or garden hoses and that sort of thing. Is what I call the black wire. But we need to unwind that chaos. We need to pull that cable through. We need to pull that wire through as well and unwind it and that sort of thing. And I don't know, sometimes I may overthink things, but one of the ways that I've realized is that a way to unwind things is you actually need to transfer it into an extra dimension. So if you ever tried to um, wind up or unwind a wire or a hose or something like that, what do you need to do? You need to put a little flip a little put a little flip in it, right? Because what you're doing is you're extending it into three dimensions. Or if you're coiling it up, you're taking it from, you know, two dimensions and you're putting it into three because you're coiling it around a loop or whatever the case may be. The point is we need to be able to unwind this, and that's what we really have to think about, is we need to take it into an extra dimension as well. And this is pretty important because this allows us to say, okay, how do we unwind that? We need to look at our point of clarity. What is that? We need to look at our point of certainty, and we need to look at our point of competency. So if we can deliver those, if we can understand those, these are in fact your specific base camps that I talked about earlier to get you to that journey, right? To get you moving forward so that you're not always second guessing yourself. You have a plan forward. You have a natural plan forward doing something like this. So the pathway to unwind it is looking at how do we actually unwinding the complexity, looking at what is our point of clarity, what is our point of certainty, and what is our point of competency. As I quickly talked about, what is the difference between a safari or expedition? Right, an expedition is a difficult task. It's a discovery. It's something that it's a journey. It's something that you need to go on to be able to get somewhere or accomplish something. Whereas a safari, what's that? That's basically going and watching, you know, the zoo animals or whatever the case may be. So it's not that hard. An expedition is what we're doing every day in our business, right? And we need to understand again, how do we prepare going there? Okay, how do we get up the summit? And guess what? Getting to the summit, that's not the ultimate goal here, right? Look at any of the expeditions from the past. Did they stop at the South Pole? You know, did they stop at the North Pole? No, they didn't. They kept going. They had to go back. And you still have to be prepared for that. And it doesn't mean that, you know, a lot of the rah-rah is getting to the summit and, you know, achieving great success, right? But guess what? That's only part of the journey. And if you look at technically, it's only half the journey. So getting to the summit, yes, absolutely important. But the expedition is a bit further than that. We have to get back to from where we came. So we have to look at that. Where we got to the South Pole, great. We're not going to stay there. We've achieved that. Let's keep moving. Let's go back. Maybe it's the same route back. Maybe it's a different route. But we need to say that we can move forward, and that's the key difference, right? The expedition is the big trend of the future in terms of how do we plan and prepare for what's coming, how do we get to where we want to go, and how do we keep moving after as well? Because if we're missing those pieces, we're missing an awful lot down the way. So what's easier, around the block or around the world? Just about ready to wrap up. So if you can hang on for a few more minutes, that'd be fantastic. So 100%, what is easier, around the block, around the world? Guess what? Around the world. I'll be completely honest. 100% commitment is easier than 90% commitment. We're at that point. We're at that 2% threshold that kind of moves you into a company that's has that digital adoption above that statistical 20% and moves it forward as well. And can you imagine, like, if we had like an extra, let's say 10,000 companies in a country that were able to increase their digital adoption by 20%? Like, let's take a small step. It doesn't have to be 100%. You don't have to be at 100% of digital adoption, but can you get from 20% to 40%? Yes, that in itself is an expedition, and we need to look at that expedition as well. So can we get that 20%? I believe so. Oh, that's like those balloon letters, 20%. All right. So can we do that? Absolutely. So can you do that? Absolutely. But you do have to commit to that. Being able to adopt some of these trends, adopt some of the methodologies, adopt some of the ways that we do that going forward. So what to do next? Well, if you want to climb up that mountain, if you want to kind of get back to business as well after everything that's happened, we need to have a specific way of doing that. And this is what I call the digital challenge. So 3 simple steps. Where are we now? Where are you right now? So you're at the base of the summit looking up. Okay, you need to be prepared. You need to be ready before you navigate up that summit. You need to know what you're going to do, how you're going to do it as well. So where are you going? How will you get there? And then what teams, tools, and tactics do you need as well? So, three simple steps that just kind of put it in perspective to say, this is what's important for this problem. This is how I'm going to actually be able to deal with it, and that sort of thing as well. So, I want to close with a final quick little story about timing and targeting. Actually, I do have another story after that. If you wouldn't mind sticking around for a few minutes, so that I can give you the a gift as well. So timing and targeting your digital expedition, rather. So vectors are everything. So there's as a former pilot in the Air Force, there was a rule of thumb that we had that said, for every, if you're 1 degree off course, for every uh, sorry, just gotta get it right. It's been a while, but for every 60 kilometers forward, if you're 1 degree off course, you're going to have a gap of one, and I'll use kilometers. Technically, it's nautical miles, but it doesn't matter. The scale is the same. So if I go 60 kilometers forward, I'm 1 degree off. 1 degree, like let's be honest, that's not a lot. That's pretty much insignificant. I'll be one if I go 1 degree off course, I'm 1 kilometer off course, which is fine if you're going 60K in an airplane. You just kind of look off to the side and go, oh yeah, okay, there's the runway down there. I'll just do a quick little turn. Not a big deal. But if I'm going from Perth, right, to Sydney, guess what? I might Sydney, rather, I might land in New Zealand. Okay, I'm going to miss my goal. I'm going to miss my objective as well. So the point is that you need to be able to be on course. And how do you do that? Through this pathway method that I showed you as well. And the last thing is looking at, okay, we have seen a lot of negativity of the economy and COVID and everything else like that, but there's a simple way to look at this. Okay, we don't necessarily control the economy, but you can control sort of your response to that economy. And there's a point which is called an inflection point, which is basically if you have your curve going down, and an inflection point is basically a change in curve. So I can change that curve as well, just quickly to illustrate that. So you need to decide quickly what's important. When are you going to help to try to change that curve? Start today, wait for tomorrow, the day after tomorrow as well. But you need to look at, are you going to be doing something strategic, which is going to reinforce your success? Are you going to do something which is you're not sure, which kind of puts you in this path of, oh, I'll try this, I'll try that, we'll see what happens, that sort of thing? Or are you going to do nothing? What does doing nothing do? That just, wait and see kind of thing, that reinforces failure as well. So you need to look at that. When are you going to actually make a move here? Are you going to decide to do it now? Right? Start today. Do something strategic today. So reinforce that success. Am I going to wait for tomorrow, or I'm going to wait for the day after tomorrow? So every moment that you take to wait is a moment basically lost. And in the pilot and flying world, when you're taking off and putting full throttle and that sort of thing to get you off the runway, if you think about it, the trees at the end of the runway, they're very, very small when you're at the other end of the runway. Okay, but if you delay that takeoff longer and longer and longer, you reach that point, and everybody's familiar with this, where you have to take off, or you have to abort the landing, or rather the takeoff. And to get to that point, the reason is because those barriers, those trees at the end of the runway, are actually getting closer and closer. So fundamentally, they're getting bigger and bigger, and that's the truth of it. They're not getting smaller; they're getting bigger the longer you wait. So you have to decide, when am I going to take off? And that's what's really important here. All right, so cool. Congratulations. You're now the new digital CEO, the Chief Expedition Officer, for listening and hopefully asking some questions. I'm going to get into those very quickly. But that's the important thing too, is that to understand that it does take a mind shift in terms of what you do, but how you think about things as well. And if we all call ourselves the Chief Expedition Officer, what does that mean? That means we're finding a new way. That means we're using the tools to be able to go on that journey, that business journey, that's going to get us to our point. And if you think about it too, like these expeditions, they didn't necessarily develop, all the latest tech and the greatest innovations and that sort of thing. They used what was there, and they assembled a team, and they had some strategies, they had some tactics that they wanted to be able to do, and they got going. And that's the key ingredient as well. So as I said, there's 3 steps for the digital challenge. Finding out where you are right now is one of the most important things. So what I have is your digital benchmark, as well as what I call it. And if you go to leadership.digital, complete the benchmark, I will send you a free paper copy of Breakthrough, not a PDF, not whatever PowerPoint presentation. I will mail you a physical copy of my latest book, Breakthrough: Unleash Your Remarkable Brand Value, Influence, and Authority, in a paperback copy. And I'll even send you a printed digital expedition worksheet as well. That those 10 steps, those 10 base camps, I'll send you a worksheet as well. So head on over to digital leadership, or sorry, leadership.digital, complete the benchmark. If you want to email me and said, hey, I did the benchmark, please do so. Doyle at dep.digital. You can find me on the socials pretty much anywhere at Doyle Bueller as well. All right, so helpful. Please like and share replay. Please leave a comment, hashtag replay. Questions, if you have anything in the meantime, please give me a shout. Questions at Doyle at dep.digital as well. All right, so that's about it. I'm just going to shut down here. But final, go to leadership.digital. Complete the benchmark, and I'll send you a book. All right, so hopefully everything went well. Again, if you did find this of value, would love it if you shared it, if you told other people about this, or shared the link, or posted a comment, or whatever. And I will shut off live now.